Now, South Korea has slapped Meta with a $15 million fine for illegally collecting user data and not properly disclosing how the data is used, using vague legal messages in their terms of service. Go figure. And of course, finally, not having proper identity verification processes because like 10 people got their accounts hacked, right? When someone faked being them going through the account recovery process. And so, of course, the attorney generals, or whatever that position's called in South Korea, they are, of course, claiming that they're protecting consumers, making sure Facebook's not inappropriately collecting data or sharing that data inappropriately, and blaming Facebook for not explicitly telling users that, hey, you're not just being tracked on Facebook, you're being tracked across the web. And I think we're getting to a point where a lot of these AGs, and by the way, I'm zooming out here, so don't take this as any one country, because most countries are doing this, and it's ridiculously annoying. Because we're going from, oh no, I didn't know big tech was censoring certain types of content, or, oh no, I didn't know big tech was following me everywhere around. In 2024, I think we all know what they're doing. And so we've gone from attorney generals saying, hey, you have to tell your users what you're doing, to attorney generals essentially being kind of glorified nannies at this point, where they're just like, hey, I know you technically following the law. I know your terms of service technically does say what we require you to say. But you know what? You're not following the spirit of the law, right? So we're going to fine you anyway. And we'll get to kind of a disturbing theory that Tim Cook allegedly has in a little bit here. But just to back up with this technology, because I think the issue is we've reached a point where it's on the consumer. It's on us to clear our browser's cookies. It's on us to use ad blockers if we don't want ads on sites. And it's on individual websites, GDPR requires this, to disclose that there's tracking pixels and codes from Google and Facebook and TikTok on their sites. So part of the issue here is governments are looking at Google and Meta and these big tech platforms and saying, hey, you're not telling your users that they're being tracked across websites, right? And Meta, Google, and Facebook are like, hey, we have a clear terms of service. Anyone who is an adult, like let's say anyone who's an adult who understands basics of technology knows we are tracking them. I mean, Apple now forces everybody to say, hey, we're tracking you, by the way. But you can reject it, kind of. And one of the issues here is a lot of these attorney generals are saying, yeah, you have a terms of service for your own site, but you're not telling people that they're being tracked on other sites. Well, that's not Facebook, Google, TikTok's job. It's the job of the website owner. In fact, in their terms of service, Google, Facebook, Meta, I'll just say social platforms, they tell all their advertisers, you have to disclose that you put our tracking pixel on your site. And so the reason I bring this up is because once these tech companies have been sucked dry from all of these fines, these attorney generals are going to start coming after the individual websites. It'll be the big ones at first, but it'll eventually trickle down. So it's very important that you have a proper terms of service and a proper privacy policy on your website that is clickable across all of your pages. So I will leave a link in the description for one I use called Termageddon, which automatically updates based upon because seriously, every single state in the U.S. has a different freaking requirement for the policy. So they actually put a code on our new site, and then they just automatically update it with whatever the heck a new attorney general or a local legislature passed, right? It's just impossible to keep up with. So even if you don't want to use Termageddon, linked up in the description, you definitely just make sure you have a privacy policy, because this is going to trickle down. This is going to start hurting us. And this hyperbolic language that's used a lot of the time is disingenuous, because a lot of these attorney generals say, hey, Facebook, Google, Meta, Facebook, Meta, Meta, Facebook, TikTok, they are sharing all this personal data with advertisers. No, they're not. You just take 90 seconds, go over to YouTube, which thankfully is still going, and look up a Facebook ads tutorial. It's a list of interests that you can't like. If you say, oh, I want to target people who like NASCAR, I want to target people who like American football, or I want to target people who like rugby, like whatever it might be, that is what a lot of these attorney generals are saying is sharing personal data. I don't know how a drop-down list of a bunch of different sports, car brands, clothing brands, general interests translates into personal data. Yes, these social media platforms know exactly which book, which car, which athlete we like, because they've got AI, they've got a lot of stuff. But they aren't taking that individual information and sharing it with advertisers. They lump it all together in this big data pack, and they say people who like luxury brands. That's it. That's you click that box, and now you can, sell your bags to people who like luxury brands. So I know I'm getting a little off track here on a rant, but all that to say, this stuff does affect us. It does trickle down. It's not too far-fetched, especially when it comes to the EU, to believe that they're going to start looking at individual sites, because the technology's there. They can start crawling sites, and they'll just start sending out letters to whoever the site administrator is saying, hey, we're fining you, 1,500 euros because this is wrong in your terms of service. And by the way, if you don't pay us within the next 90 days, we're going to block you from the EU, right? So there's a little tinfoil hat. And just to wrap up here, when I was watching the Joe Rogan and now President-elect Trump podcast, something that was interesting is the president or future president, I guess now, mentioned that he had a conversation with Tim Cook where Tim called him up and said, hey, the EU's fined us I don't know how many billions of dollars again. They are using these fines to run their bureaucracies.
3 hours ago, he called me. He said, I'd like to talk to you about something. What? He said, the European Union has just fined us $15 billion. I said, that's a lot. I know the feeling because I get fined too in fake cases. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if his case is fake yet, but it's a lot. Then on top of that, they got fined by the European Union another $2 billion. So he's a $17 to $18 billion fine. I even said about Apple, can you pay that? I mean, do you have that guy? Mm-hmm. That's a lot of money. And he said something that was interesting. He said they're using that to run their enterprise, meaning Europe is their enterprise. And I said, that's a lot. I said, but Tim, I got to get elected first. But I'm not going to let them take advantage of our companies.
When you start looking at the total amounts that other bureaucracies or governments or, protection agencies continually fine these guys, yes, they always try and skirt around the laws. But at some point, we have to look and say, okay, why are you trying to fine, Musk almost a fourth of his global revenue? And then why are you including other companies that he happens to own in this fine? It starts to look like something else is going on. So there's the tinfoil hat. Long story short, just make sure you have your terms of service and your privacy policy clearly on your website, whether you head over to Create Market or Etsy, or you look for a template online. Do not copy and paste it. That's a quick way to get a lawyer, a real lawyer showing up. That'll make things go faster. So even if you don't use Termageddon linked up in the description, just have that protection ready, because if they're coming for the billion-dollar companies, you better believe they're going to eventually get a system in place where they come for every single site, because this is very important to them. Whether or not it's important to us is a whole nother story.